I can move you over a little bit. Over that way anyway, out of my way. Yeah, we're live. 7-Eleven. Slurpee time. I have my green screen up because I was using it today. Employed it in my video that I posted today. You guys will be able to see that if you watch the introduction. So I'm officially on the green screen team, which was good. You know, honestly, it's about time. So you can see something other than the bookshelf and stuff when I'm doing this. Obviously not on the live feed, but we can do that on the other videos, which is kind of cool. So I like that, and I probably will be incorporating that. We'll be throwing in different. So let me know, let me know in the comments what kind of backgrounds you want to see. I just picked a small block Chevy because the video that I was doing, and we're going to talk about that tonight. The video that I was doing was small block Chevy nitrous cams, all without testing any kind of nitrous cam because, you know, just like with Boost, all cams are nitrous cams. But this is a good test, and we'll go in reverse order, I guess, here, because I want to talk about the thumbnail is the Barry Grant Tri-Power carburation setup. In fact, we'll go on that because that's not going to be that won't be a very lengthy discussion. First of all, Tri-Power is like dual quads, cross rams, any of those things. Very cool because they're, I mean, if you look at that photo, I can bring that up so you guys can take a look at that. Walk this way. Okay, here we go. See, this is the photo I'm talking about. 3 2 barrels, 3, you know, these are Barry Grant demon-esque carburetors. But 2 barrels. The center one has a, you can see has a choke on it. In fact, that's an electric choke from the center. I don't have the other linkage hooked up. You'll notice this from here going over to there. This photo was taken before we hooked that up for the dyno. This is essentially, I'm thinking that this is a dual plane-esque intake manifold. I remember testing it, and I remember running it on the small block. I think I ran it on the original Gladiator motor, the original one, the 355 that they had that was treated to endless, like 1,000 runs or more. And the Tri-Power actually did very well. Normally when we run these, you know, dual quad things or multi-carb things, we don't usually expect them to do well. You know, the Edelbrock Performer RPM air gap with a carburetor on it usually does very, very well. And everything else is just a measurement thereof. Like a single plane might make a little bit more power, but it usually loses through most of the curve. The Tri-Power stuff did well, and I was happy with that. I was happy with that test because, like I said, it also looks cool. I, like most people, would probably be willing to sacrifice some of the power just because when you lift the hood, you know, it's got a cool long oval air cleaner on it that says Tri-Power on it. And it's just, you know, a single 4-barrel, while it works fantastic for like street applications, it's just boring. And yes, we know it's always a trade-off. It looks good, but how well does it work? But in this case of the Tri-Power, it actually worked fairly well. But unfortunately, they're obviously not using that. They're not running that anymore that I know of. I think that thing's been long gone. For quite a while. I don't know if maybe Holly bought Barry Grant. I don't know if they resurrected that or not. If anybody knows, please let me know in the comments if they even resurrected that. But so let's talk about now. We'll talk about the let's see here. We'll put a poll up and go on. Oh, puppies are barking. Okay, would you run a multi-carb induction system because it looks cool, even if it lost a little power? So would you trade that? Trade the power for awesome looks? Let me know in the comments. So we can talk about the small block Chevy Nitrous video that I just put up. If you haven't taken a look at it, I just put it up not too long ago. So please don't leave here and go do that. If you could do a dual screen deal, you know, you can watch both. Go take a look at that, please. I ran this test way back. And I ran it on, I think this might be the first time that I did multiple cams with the same nitrous, like in the same test. I've run motors, you know, with nitrous on them, and then later on we changed the cam and I ran nitrous with them again, but not as a direct comparison. And I kind of wanted to see, and I remember repeating this test with an actual nitrous cam. I'm like, oh yeah, we got to run a nitrous cam because with the nitrous cam, we're going to get lots of power. And then having done that many, many times with like the Extreme Energy 274 cam on the Ford stuff and running it with the nitrous and the blower and the turbos on them, I'm like, look, they just do what they're going to do. If you add nitrous and you add 100 shot, it's going to add 100 shot. In this test, though, that's not what happened. So we ran and this was interesting because it has lots of variables here. We ran the small block with a very small single pattern cam. So it's a high energy cam. So not only is it a single pattern, it's an earlier version of a single pattern. So it doesn't have the ramp rates that an extreme energy does. It's a single pattern. It's smaller. Everything about it is different than the extreme energy that I end up running, and the quintessential extreme energy 268 cam. And that for small blocks, that's a pretty good streetable camshaft. And we saw, because I included in the video, I included just a back-to-back test NA of the camshafts. One of them, the bigger cam obviously makes a lot more power. The smaller one makes more power down low. And that's usually the trade-off that we associate going with these kinds of cams. One of them, the little cam, the 252 cam, is, it's a 206 duration, 425 lift. So it's, it's what now we're calling a truck cam. But back then it was an RV cam, basically. So that was kind of it. Had I tested an extreme energy version of that cam that was close to like a 206, 212 or something like that, it would have made more power for a couple of reasons. From just the standpoint that we had a dual pattern cam would have been better. The extreme energy profiles would have been more aggressive, although they do take more spring rate. With the extreme energy one, almost certainly would have had more lift. I would like to see these cams, these small block Chevy cams, even for flat tap and stuff. I'd like to see them in the 500 lift stuff, especially as we go out in duration. When we go to a 224 cam or something, even on a flat tap, but there's no reason we can't run. These things can't be in the 500 lift range, in the low 500 lift range. I think it would be better. So I ran that test, and we ran nitrous on both of them. And the upshot is that it gained a little bit less power with the smaller cam than it did with the bigger cam. And so so discuss. What are your thoughts? Yes, that was said in irony, ironically. And so that's the whole thing about the video is why did it do that? What do you guys think? And at the end of the video, kind of show you why I think it did that. But you guys all get to know, you guys get to ask or get to comment on what it is you think happened and why and all that, which is, it's always good. I like when people jump in and although, obviously we're going to get people that are not basing their comments on the actual data. They're going to be basing it on something else. That's the nicest way I can put it. But let's go to our comments and see what you guys got going on for tonight. It's been a while. I've been doing graduation stuff. So my son graduated, and we've been doing that for the last couple of days, which was very awesome. I know, Eric. I missed the withdrawal. I went into withdrawal too. Missed the live stuff. Admiral, you have store credit, so you're going to buy mufflers. That's good. Mexico's in the house. What do you think about the BTR Red Hot cam? I have a test up on it. We've run it. The Red Hot cam we have in the 5.3. We just redid the Truck Norris and the Chupacabra cam. So I don't think that Red Hot cam is in there anymore. But for a long time, the Red Hot cam was in that 5.3. Honestly, for a 5.3, I think it's a little on the big side. I would much rather go with the Hot Rod cam than the Red Hot cam. But for other things, like I recommend the Red Hot cam for guys wanting to make power with 6 liters. And then that cam really is, I think when they originally did it, was more for an LS3. And so we know that it works well in that application. My Turbo 205 minivan finally blew the head gasket, 28 PSI. That's a lot of boost. So what is your ceiling for that on your minivan? Is it and what motor is it? Is it a Dodge 2.2? 2015, I wouldn't think it would be, but let me know what that is. Let me know what motor that is. Richard, do you think 60s and 70s era muscle cars has supercharger, twin turbos, and blowers on them? They would compete with today's muscle cars. So you want to put all of those on there? Or just one of those blower setups. An earlier motor is not nearly as good as a later motor is. I mean, an LS motor, to give you an idea, if you look at even an LM7 5.3 from a truck, which is the low man on the totem pole, it makes as much power as as an LT1 does, or a 327 or a DZ302. It makes as much power as those. It just does it at an earlier engine speed. And so it makes a lot more average torque than those do down in that RPM range. It doesn't want to rev to 7,000 like a DZ302 does, but it makes that much power. When you go up and test like an LS1, an LS2, an LS6, an LS3, any of those, it's not even close compared to any of the small blocks, certainly. Now, we don't have big block equivalents of those. So the big blocks did well. And then you just take the NA power output and multiply it out with blower stuff. Obviously, with the muscle car era stuff, if you're running 11 or more to 1 compression, unless you're running on E85, you wouldn't probably want to be doing that. They wouldn't have done that from the factory. I want to twin charge my 3800. Yeah, it is cool. And if you're going to do that and you want good visual appeal, I don't know if this is going in a rear-wheel drive car or not. If it is, then twins, obviously, on either side of the blower would be good. There's too many variables to pinpoint the one reason why the power was made in the end. Okay. The poll topic depends on the car. You could get comp to do 2 grinds for the same exact application, the same NA power goal, with the only difference being one is for nitrous and one is for NA. Well, they have that. I mean, they have dedicated nitrous grinds that have lots more exhaust duration and stuff. But again, my thing always is, and this is what people don't want to do, is that you need to, at the very least, like how do you make those cams the same? So if you run one NA cam, let's say that they're both 230 degrees at 50 on the intake duration. A nitrous cam might have 12 or 16 or 20 degrees of exhaust split. So, and then the NA cam is not going to have that. So the question is, what happens to the NA power with the change that you made to the nitrous cam? So it's going to start out somewhere different. And then if you add the 100 horsepower, 99.9% of the tests that I've done on the nitrous means that you add 100 horsepower to whatever your starting point is. And I haven't seen that not be the case. I haven't tried to run all of the nitrous on stuff where that might come into play. But what will come into play before that magic cam valve events come into play is the power output, the NA power output of the motor. So, and then we can add nitrous as a percentage of that. Now, I had somebody from England call me or reach out and talk to me and say, hey, look, that's not the case. We can run like 100% where the nitrous or whatever the number is, because his thing, I think, was that he's injecting liquid nitrous still in a liquid state into the combustion chamber so that he's not displacing the airflow nearly as much, which is a good idea if that's what's happening. So that you don't have, because when it phase changes basically and turns into a gas, I think it's going to displace more of the airflow. What he's talking about, if you can get the injection to go down in, the end of the head into the valve and go in as a liquid and phase change inside the combustion chamber, I don't think you'll have the same issue with displacing the airflow. And so I think you can get larger amounts of nitrous. I haven't seen that actually tested in like on the dyno at Westech. I think it would be cool. And if his system does that, it would be interesting to try that, just to see if we could take a motor that I don't care about, like the 4.8 or any 5.3 junkyard motor or whatever, and then have a system plumbed so that it does that. I think that would be interesting, because the thing that I find interesting about that is if you were injecting liquid nitrous into there, you're not getting the same cooling gains that you get from injecting the liquid nitrous somewhere else. So you're going to lose some of that, but is the amount of nitrous that you can add in, does it more than offset that? If what he's talking about is true, yeah, it's, if we get to the 50% level, let's say, of the NA power outputs, meaning we have a 500 horsepower motor and we're adding 250 horsepower with the nitrous, once we start going above that, and it depends on a lot of things like the port volume, the total head flow. Do we have heads on there that will support 600 horsepower NA and we're only making 500? So we really have a 600 horsepower head, and the displacement will be a 600 horsepower head and not a 500 horsepower head. But all of that notwithstanding, if we can add more liquid nitrous to it and not displace it, we should be able to get big power gains. And I kind of like to see that test. Thank you, man. Let's talk about snakes. Richard, did you see the picture I sent you of the gopher snake my dogs are messing with? I didn't see that, which I definitely would have opened that up. If I like gopher snakes are cool. I get a lot of those around here. So let's see. I got to scroll back. I think I got lost. Let's see. No, I think I'm good. Bam, 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 bam. Okay, no, I was right there. Let's see. Took a break on cars today. Pulled out the YZ250. Finally got it started. Nice. Big bang test on the Ameribara. I will run multi-throttle body instead of multi-carburetor. In fact, Richard, know why my double throttle body 351 Torino project. I'm still scrolling. Here we go. We need a 68 2+2 with the biggest factory option. Needs twin turbos. Okay, all that. Yep. Grandpa has a 502 Chevy crate motor and a pickup, taking on late model Camaros and Mustangs. 502s are good. Richard, did you see the LZ1 Camaro that ran at Le Mans? I saw pictures of it. They detuned it. Yeah, the Le Mans usually has a restrictor plate that classes have to run. I don't know what size motor that is or what the original power output was. I remember back in the day, the first street car that they had to detune to run at Le Mans was the McLaren F1. Which is the best option for truck North or Red Hot for my 6-liter? It depends on what you're trying to do with it. If it's a daily driver and it's a stock converter and stuff, a truck Norris would be way better than a Red Hot cam. Richard, if boosting on a cam, is there a big benefit going to an early Gen 3 Hemi versus an Eagle? I don't think so. The later one's going to make more power because it has better heads on it. You don't have a cam that's dedicated for the exact brand of turbo you use, plus your Zodiac sign and blood type. Man, blood type, we're getting real specific, huh? So we have to have left-handed camshafts too? Dual quads drop jaws. That's true. The multi-carb stuff is really cool. Do we ever talk about how fast valves open and close? So you want to talk about ramp rates? Is that how different cams with the same spec have different curves? Yeah, the shape of the lobe can be different, even though it can like begin and end at the same point. What dynamic compression do you aim for? I don't aim for dynamic compression ratio ever. The O-ring heads anymore. I haven't ever done that. I remember back in the day, guys doing. I remember Duttweiler doing the doing stuff with the guys from TrickFlow on their or Felpro, I think, on their receiver O-ring deals for the gaskets that they made. But I never tried those. We just used 1011 -2s on everything. But the I know Mahovitz does. Eric, it's an '05 Tony Stewart Monte Carlo. My mom left it to me when she was passed. She only got to enjoy it for a month before she ended up in the hospital. I'm sorry to hear that, man. Did you see the girl who played with a copperhead thinking it was a garter snake? No, I haven't seen that. That's not a good outcome. What's your opinion on trunnion upgrades? Trunnion upgrades, I think, are a good idea, as I've always talked about, when you have high mileage things, because a lot of these, like these junkyard motors that we get, have several 100,000 miles on them. And let's face it, you're not doing the trunnion upgrade for power or anything. You're doing it because the trunnions are basically just worn out after that many miles. And it's not, that shouldn't surprise anybody. Thinking man, a 5 or 6 foot long gopher snake would be big. The street power isn't everything. It has to be cool. That's true. I want to build a 69 Corvette. I had one of those for a very short period of time with a 427, and it was an original tri-power car and a 4-speed car with a fab tri-power carb converted to act as just throttle bodies. Okay. How much horsepower can 706 heads with only exhaust porting? If you were going to do either one of those, you should do intake porting on it to have it make more power. Place the clutch on 89 Lancer. Will now hold the power. Do you have, what clutch did you put in it? I remember seeing videos on oil temp and power. I know you did the water temp. It would be neat to see air, water, and oil on your overlay power graphs. I'm trying to think if we've done oil temperature. Normally with oil temperature, we try to make sure it's the same. But I know that when we do, no, we have done oil temperature because we've got to get the oil at temperature. Otherwise, it makes less power on the top if the oil is not at temperature. And we know that also from oil pump tests where we've changed the pressure fairly sizably. And it definitely changes the power. Can running too large of a CFM throttle body hurt you? No, if it's a throttle body. The only thing that it does is the opening rate on a big throttle body can make it drivability a little bit more difficult, depending on a lot of factory stuff that has big throttle bodies has a rising rate throttle, at least initially. And then it makes the drivability a little bit better. And also it's the thing that they've cured with drive-by-wire stuff. So they're having the computer do it for you and it's not herky-jerky. But otherwise, no, it does too large of a throttle body. Like if you go to wide open throttle, the bigger throttle body is not going to like hurt you for air velocity and torque. It's not going to do that. That's all going to be determined by the intake manifold. Pair of Dominators on a Cleveland looks good. I agree. I know how to O-ring a head. That's good. Idea twin 3 barrels. So you want to have a 6-barrel deal? Having a small watch Chevy flat plane crank, would it be worth it? No, I don't think so. It'll sound really cool if that's what you're trying to do, but not from a power standpoint. Admiral, it would be called a Trifoc Verdoppeln. The triple double. That's German. Or what was it? This is from Sports Night. Inga Rawa U, I think, is the triple double in the ancient language of Akkadian. That's right. What's the deal with Gen 3? I thought I would never be able to quote that, but what's the deal with Gen 3 Hemi valve seats? Yeah, they are a concern, especially for higher mileage stuff. So it's something you should look at doing and fixing before you put them on a motor. Tom, if you have a daily driver and it's a 6-liter, I would not pick a red hot cam then. I'd pick either a hot rod. You have a stall converter, so you could pick a camshaft like that. I'd pick a hot rod or the Truck Norris. You have experience with side loading bronze valve guides that aftermarket LS has used? Do you have aftermarket heads that have bronze guides in them? You should specify that you want powdered metal guides. But yeah, a roller rocker is not a bad idea there. Turbos unleashed, unsprung six puck. Let me know how that clutch drives. Okay, I'm curious about a puck clutch. Oh, triple 3 barrels. Okay, so my trifactor Doblin is not good. 2000 CFM Scorpion on a single plane, Victor Jr. on a 6-liter. Well, you'll know that you don't have any sort of airflow restriction on your throttle body. That's for sure. So your turbos unleashed clutch is an unsprung 6-puck. That's not gonna be a drivable deal. Does it have Marcel or anything in it? My wife doesn't complain about the same disc in the minivan. Oh, nice. Hey, that is drivable. At what point is pinning a crank necessary? It's necessary when you run a supercharger. On any of the LS stuff, if you have any sort of supercharger on there, you should pin the crank. I thought Acadian was a French dialect. Acadian is what the Rock was in Scorpion King. And I may not have said it with the correct accent. I wasn't looking for accents, just accuracy. TV quote level of accuracy. Let's see. Let's go to live chat. Live. How's our poll doing? Would you run a multi-carb induction system because it looks cool even if it lost a little bit of power? 59% are saying yes. The F28 Ford dual quad manifold looks like putting 2 barrels over the outermost holes front and back will give almost even length. Planning on putting an LSA supercharger on my 5.3. I guess I'll be pinning the crank. So Nicholas, are you changing the crank in your 5.3? You're putting an aftermarket crank? If you're putting an aftermarket crank, a lot of those aftermarket cranks come with a slot for a key. Factory cranks do not. Oh, pin kits. Okay. Yeah, pin kits are easy to do. ATI has one, and also the other guys where you just drill in and pin it. We've used them, and they both work really well. If you know your deck height, cam specs, piston to valve, relief depth, and head gasket thickness, can you calculate your piston to valve clearance from that to know if you can go to a larger rocker ratio? A rocker ratio is going to change piston to valve clearance very, very little, because it's only going to change cam duration by a couple of degrees, unless you're making a dramatic change in rocker ratio. But I don't think you'd need to know valve drop. I think would be a better way to have to do the calculation, and it's so much easier to measure it than it is to try to calculate all that. And going with the supercharger, will the adapters make it lose power? There's I have ads running, so if you guys are seeing ads, I'm sorry. When going with the supercharger, there's no way to measure whether or not the adapters make it lose power, because you can't run that supercharger without the adapters. I would suspect yes, judging by what I've gotten from the tests when I've run LS3 intake manifolds on cathedral port motors with adapters. They make less power. But how do we compare it against something else? Because we can't run LS3 heads on there, at least not yet, but we're going to. Found the Demon 98 carbs that are 3-bolt style. I have 3.2 setup and found the rare Edelbrock 5412 small block 432 intake manifold. Cool. AJ, so you're doing testing injectors as big as my forearm. That's good size. Marine diesels. Lots of flow. All the flow so that you could run nitromethane, right? All the good stuff. 57%. I like that. So who here has watched the video that I posted today? Anybody? Anyone? Anyone? Bueller. Scroll back. Triple. Only got to watch the first half. Nice. You started streaming. I know. I just interrupt everything, right? What valve clearance is safe for 6,500 RPM? The thing about RPM is you tend to have more piston to valve clearance at engine speed because you have more deflection. But there can also be some frequency things going on there. So when we measured static piston to valve clearance, there's usually more when it's dynamic because we've run things that have, I've run camshafts that have 3,000 or 4,000 piston to valve clearance, and I ran it and it didn't hit. So it obviously had more than that. I just got a Carl's Jr. ad. Now I'm hungry. I would Carl's Jr. At least if they're gonna run ads, they should at least send me burgers or something. Puck clutches aren't always undrivable. Compound matters. Yeah, a lot. 3.2 setup going on a 5-liter roller with a 274 cam and AFR enforcers. That should be a good combination. Multiple carbs because it looks cool. Yes, I agree. Always. And I can tell you, if I put a video up that has multiple carbs instead of a single carb, even if the single carb has more power, the multiple carb stuff will get a lot more views. That's why I put the photo up here. Tunnel Ram Mafia. I'm a big fan of tunnel rams. After doing because I'd done tunnel ram tests on small block Chevys, small block Fords. In fact, the manifold that I still want to run, and Westech has one that's been sitting there for 20 years. They have a Wyand tunnel ram that has provisions for injectors, and this is before they did all the high ram stuff. But they had that, and then you put the box on top of that and make the Flowmaster intake that I find people, if you guys remember that they had back in the day. That's always the intake that I wanted to run because it always made the most power of anything. But I remember doing those and the tunnel ram stuff back in the day. And then when I did the big block stuff, I'm like, man, this is really a lot better. This is why people put tunnel rams on motors and even put them on street motors, which, for years people have been telling you, oh, you can't run tunnel rams. It's just, it'll just flood the motor. Put those two big carburetors on there. No, it's going to lean pop, if anything. Richard on the Hemi, did you delete MDS? Yes and no. I didn't initially, but later on I did. We ran it with the heavy injectors initially, and it ran fine. And then we took them out and put regular lifters in. You can always bolt on more chrome to gain the horsepower back. That's right, chrome valve. I remember doing that with my Camaro back in the day when I first had them. Like, my dad would send me to the store. I'd get stuff because we were rebuilding the motor, and I'd come back with a chrome coil and the Cal custom valve covers and the spark plug wire separators and stuff. He's like, "What are you doing with this stuff? That's not what you needed to spend the money on." Like, I know, but look at it. It looks cool. Sexiest looking setup on Earth was bold statement. Was the Monster Dominator on a giant single plane high rise on B1 heads on a big black Mopar. I have a Wenzler for Pontiac. It has bungs for injectors, and he sells multiple tops for it too. That's cool. That one I know has been because they used to give me such a hard time running Fords. Like, I can't believe you're running a Ford. I'm like, yeah, well, back then, the 5-liter Mustang was the biggest industry going. The chrome foot gas pedal. Yeah, if you had a boat, you definitely had to have that. I mean, that goes without saying. I remember the pedal covers that like had the little tabs on so that you could just wrap the tabs basically around your pedal. You could have the chrome gas pedals. A Domino's ad. Well, that's my people's though. That's little C to the J, little Domino's. Krager SS Mads. Yeah, I didn't have Kragers on it, but I do like those. I had what the heck are they called? Slotted mags. Richard, did you pull the MDS cylinder and replace it with plugs? Yes. What did you run for an alternator? We didn't run an alternator. We don't need one. Keystones looks cool too with the little black insets. It's got combo pros for my car, which let's see. It's a lot of mags that used to be magnesium. I don't think mine were magnesium. I think that mine were aluminum, but got the chrome footprint pedal for my GTO. That's period correct. That definitely is. Does anybody know if there's a desktop dyno out there for free? I'm sure you're talking about the software program. Underdog, I would measure it. Like to see a comparison of the high energy 268 for the extreme energy 268. Did they make a high energy? Oh, they did, right? 218, 218. The extreme energy is definitely going to make more power than that. It's definitely going to make more power on the top. That's a single pattern camshaft. So the dual pattern camshaft is definitely going to make more power at the top. I wouldn't be surprised if that smaller cam makes a little more down low. Ben just said Dayton. Oh, Dayton spokes. It's possible to have too much stall where because of too much stack, you can't do a burnout. Yes, that would be possible. My 65 Fairlane had chrome appliance strikers on it. Yeah, Flawless. If you had a stock motor that had a 4,000 RPM stall converter on it, I don't think it would spin the tires. I have the HE version. Is a great driver, but drops fast after 5,300. Richard, I have issues charging on the charger and learning and leaning towards a 20% underdriven crank pulley balancer from Summit. I'd never run those in cars, so I don't know. We don't have a charging issue. We have we have an alternator that's driven off of a belt, off of a pump in the back, and then we have two Optima batteries or some kind of batteries sitting there for the dyno. So we don't normally have. And if we ever do, sometimes we'll come in and just bring the battery charger on them. What else makes cams lose power on the low end? Yeah, wide LSAs tend to do that. More duration tends to do that. I had a buddy who put a chrome faucet on each side of his carburetor drum. That's good. If duration is the same, but lift is higher, will a cam gain power everywhere? Maybe. The answer is always, it depends. Just put a Truck Norris cam on my 5.3 Cutlass. I'm sure you were happy with it, like most people are. How about a tri-power setup for an LS7, 3 2-barrel size Holly's, a Holly Sniper on a tri manifold and topped off with a. Yeah, you could do that on a factory tri-power. Is that what you're talking about? Put throttle body in there. Where are you going to put the injectors? Or are you going to make the 2 barrels like EFI and do it that way? Gene, do a neutral drop. That's always the go-to, right? Or you could roll it in reverse a little ways and then pull it down into first and nail it. Father-in-law is a convertible 67, should be a 386 4-barrel. He's got a very period correct force, 27 tri-power side pipes and knockoff wheels. Cool car, not matching numbers. That is cool though. I mean, Richard, why did Chrysler move the voltage regulator to the ECM back in '87? I have no idea. I didn't even know that they did that, so I'd be the wrong guy to ask about that. Ben from the car farm would be the guy to ask about that. Justin, you need to rephrase your question. Put a truck Norris cam, 5.3, 3,200 stall, 410 gears. I'm happy with it. I'm fuel injected, but I feel I could get more power if I go the carburetor. I don't agree with that. I don't know of a carbureted manifold that's going to get you more power than, I'm assuming that you have the truck intake manifold. I think a rocker upgrade is like increasing lift with very minimal duration change. So does it gain power everywhere? Again, it just depends. It depends on what the cam is now, what the motor likes, what the head likes, where the duration is. It depends on a lot of different things. Every rocker change that increases lift doesn't add power. I've had many times when it doesn't do anything. The thing that it will do, especially on an LS, is if you do that on an LS, you're definitely going to run into valve float a lot easier. Over the years, I've collected dual quads for 289 302 Fords, Pontiacs, 671, 65 tri-power. Should use them on all my thumbnails. You should, though. Those are good. Flawless. And LS6 intake is good. You're going to be real hard-pressed to beat that. Richard, when you lived in Henderson, do you remember an old man that had a 67, 68 fiber that had every dress-up part you could put on a car? I don't. I don't remember seeing that drive around. Just saw your nitrous camshaft video with my LA small block 360, changing the cam to a dual pattern, larger crankshaft. I'm sure you mean camshaft. I picked up 25 horsepower and torque over the old cam. So like we showed, if you change the camshaft all by itself changes power. And so then you have a new starting point, and then you add whatever the amount of nitrous is. Then you have a new ending point too. Really thought you made more power on your truck Norris cam 5.3 than you did carb on one of your videos. I've never seen if you look at the intake videos where I've compared carbureted intake manifolds directly to fuel injected intake manifolds, I haven't seen a carbureted manifold, except in rare instances like on the LS3 deal where a single plane manifold may have made more power at the very top than like the factory long runner manifold. But through the most part of the vast majority of the curve, the long runner manifold's better. The dual plane manifold on a cathedral port has made more low speed power than the truck manifold, but then the truck manifold did better. Question: what happened to the Barry Grant tri-power? I don't know. That was my question for tonight too. Auto Trend EFI makes EFI throttle bodies that look like Stromberg's. AccuFab has done those. Would 706 heads work okay on the 383, the truck Norris cam, waiting for good torque on a heavy truck? Yeah, they'll work fine. They start to become restrictive when you go to bigger motors, but I don't know that you're looking for maximum power. On a truck Norris cam, they'll be fine. Would a Sniper dual platinum 102 be a good choice for a 408? I think you're going to be limited. It's going to limit top end. It's going to make a lot of torque though. Yeah, flawless. The dual plane has made more low speed power sometimes in the truck. So the stroke is the same on the 5.7 and 6.1, 3.578. And then the bore is different, 3.917 versus 4.055 for the 6.1. But I don't know about the cast versus forge thing. Drag van, you have 613 horsepower and 648 foot-pounds at the wheels. Is this got to be through an automatic, right? Yeah, the torque number is probably not accurate. What motor is this? Will you ever do a Sniper 102 versus a fast 102 Cathedral port? Are you talking about the Sniper sheet metal manifold? If so, I've already done that. We already know what that does. A fast 102 is the best intake manifold that you can put on a Cathedral port application below 7,000 RPM. What's your input on a 5.3 LS swapped with a turbo 350 versus a 4L60? I don't know what your question is. An overdrive trans would ultimately be better because you could have more top speed and more fuel economy, is if you could get the 4L60 to work with your modified 5.3 and not break. .360 small block on a 250 shot. It's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be at least 100 horsepower, probably with the 727 and a Dana 60. I don't know what size wheels and tires you have, but I'm sure it's going to be 100 horsepower. And the torque number probably is, I mean, I don't know what the motor combination is. Could be a converter spike or something. It's hard to get accurate stuff on an automatic trans on the chassis dyno. On the chassis dyno. So we're going to close out our poll. Yes, we'd run a multi-carb induction system. 57% are saying yes. I'm part of that group. Green screen. I need to get a little bit different lighting in it. Will work better. Went to high school with a girl named Chassis. Is she working now? Is she dancing? So why do all the guys at the track use turbo 350s? Because for the track, you could mile an hour and you could get the things that you need to do out of a turbo 350. The turbo 350 will be stronger than a 4L60, and they're less expensive to begin with, is probably why a lot of guys are doing it. I was thinking about the Sniper dual plenum 102 versus the fast 102. The dual plenum probably will make, I don't know. That's a good question. The dual plenum made a lot of low speed power that I don't think the fast is going to do, but I don't remember testing them. I only tested that versus the truck manifold. I don't know. I have to go back and look at that now. I'm glad you brought that up. Justin, you're not going to be unhappy with any of those. I would just pick a torque. I mean, I would just pick a truck Norris cam. If you're if it's a 5.3 and you want to do it with a stock converter, I personally think that a truck Norris is right on the edge for that. Brian tells me that they run 4.8 with stock converters in them, but I don't think that that's I don't think that that's really a good idea. Richard, why not have a super high lift but low RPM cam to make big torque at lower engine speed? Part of the problem that you run into with lots of lift and no duration is ramp rate. And so you run into a stability problem where that camshaft is not going to want RPM at all. And high lift doesn't necessarily mean more power. It doesn't necessarily mean more low RPM power. It doesn't work that way any more than continuing to have a tighter LSA will continue to do that. At some point down at lower engine speeds, the cam doesn't really have an effect. It doesn't seem to change the power. How far away is Paris? I think Paris is in Southern California, right? Justin, it's a 2014 Gen 453. I thought a 2014 was. I thought that's a Gen 5. Nope, not yet. First year of the L83 5.3 liter was 2014 in the LT version. The LT version of the 5.3 appeared in direct injection. Okay. So that was in 2014. So if yours is a... Did they also offer the... Did they also offer the regular LS version in 2014? I thought that was like right the... Oh, it's an old body style. Okay. A 6-liter with a 4.8 crank, do they make more power? No, a 6-liter with a 6-liter crank will make more power than a 6-liter with a 4.8 crank because it's a bigger motor, and a bigger motor makes more power. For you, I got a 6-liter looking for 850 wheel horsepower. What turbo should I go with? An S475 or a VS Racing 7875 Gen 2, that kind of thing. Something to think about. My van does a 168, 60 foot time, an 1/8 mile in 7.7, and me just over 6,000 pounds. So I think the numbers are close. The numbers are obviously close. I'm just saying that when you run, if yours is the one that we were talking about, horsepower and torque, the torque number that you're seeing, like if we ran that motor on the engine dyno, you're not going to see what you're seeing. You're not going to see a torque number that's higher than a horsepower number unless we hit the nitrous early enough. That's the only way that that's going to happen. And what happens is when you run motors with automatic transmissions, especially with higher stall speeds on the chassis dyno, you see an artificial converter spike, basically. And so it artificially inflates the torque number relative to the horsepower number. So that's my point. I'm not saying that your motor doesn't make power. It obviously does, especially if you're drag racing. You should be happy with it. Hot mess. I have some Summit gift cards, so that I get stuff from Summit and not Jegs normally. NASCAR at Le Mans was an innovation demo class AD tuner for reliability, about 750 horsepower. Did they finish the race? Did they finish all 24 hours? So no point in a D-stroke motor. There is a point for D-stroke motors for classification where you have a limited displacement. And so then you would want to possibly run less stroke and more bore so that you could put bigger cylinder heads and get more flow and all that. That's when you'd want to do that. But you wouldn't want, no engine builder in any class would ever say, man, you know what I need to do? I know that the class rule is 6 liters, but I'm going to build a smaller motor so that I can make more power. Nobody would do that. They would all, every motor that you see in any class that has a displacement limitation, they were at the limit of that displacement because they just make more power. They finished the race, but had to pit for an hour to swap transmissions. Okay. Well, that good on them for finishing. That's a difficult thing to do, to be racing for that period of time. What do you think of the max speeding rod T6 S475? I didn't know max speeding had that, offered that turbo. Otherwise, I would want to try it. The max speeding guys want me to do more stuff with them, and I would like to do more stuff with them to see if that works, because I get questions about their stuff a lot. I've tried their smaller GT3582s, and they work well. It's 8 o'clock here, and it's about 2 minutes before I get off. I would imagine that the S475s for max speeding are going to be like the S475s that everybody else gets, that probably all come from, 1 or 2 or 3 different places overseas. Hot Mess, they've been coming out with some few different turbos lately. They asked me about doing a GT45, which the one that I have is a DNA one. And then also I've had one from CX Racing, but I want to try their GT45 and see. Yeah, Flawless. I'm in California. Richard, quick one. Have you considered high stall clutch springs on this Honda 90? No, I need to tune up the 90. It's not running right. So I need to check the I'm going to check the lash and check the points and stuff. Made max torque at 3,400 RPM and hit the nitrous 3,000. Yes, that's a big spike. We see that when I hit a lot of times, like Brule, when he runs nitrous on stuff, he likes to hit it at the end of the run, just bah, and then go, okay, look, it works. Everything's tuned right. It's doing what it's supposed to do. And especially early on, I was running nitrous from like 3,500 all the way out. We would just lay in it and let it go for the whole thing and see what it would do. But if you hit it early, what happens is, because horsepower equals torque times RPM, or 5252. So anything below 5252, you're going to gain more torque. Anything after 5252, you're going to gain more horsepower. You're going to shift those things. And so you can get really big torque numbers from hitting the nitrous early, although the nitrous guys, everybody tells you don't do that on the street or at the track. I would not want a non-top of the line turbo. Scott, that's not true. A NASCAR team made a smaller cubic inch displacement with more RPM, and a rules made for the minimum CID after that. I don't know how that's possible. No race team I've ever seen or even heard of has ever done that. Nobody's made a smaller motor and made more power than a bigger motor. What they would do in a situation like that, and they have done this before. I remember they did this to one of the guys, I think, because I remember Ilmore, I think, did a motor for Mark Martin or somebody, and they did it at one of the road racing tracks or something, and they took it apart and immediately outlawed it. And I thought that what they did was to put RPM limits on them. But like I said, no Formula One team, and if you were going to do it nobody does that. Nobody in Cup ever did that I know of. Nobody in Top Fuel does that. Nobody in Pro Stock. nobody in Comp Eliminator or any of the, any of the drag racing classes would make a smaller motor, because that's just not, it doesn't make sense to do that. Because if you can do that, if you, a 300-inch motor, a 400-inch motor is going to make more power than a 300-inch motor. And if you look at any of the forms of racing, that's all that they do. They get up to us, like in NASCAR, I read a good book on, or not on NASCAR, but I read a good book on Formula One. And they said, look, these motors for a long time have made roughly the same specific torque output. All they've done was shift up the torque and make more horsepower. So they're just making more RPM. And they finally, the ruling body said, yeah, we're not going to have 20,000 RPM Formula One motors. That's just way too expensive. Not that Formula One isn't really expensive already, but that's the thing. You keep, because you get to a point where the specific torque output that you get is, within a given window, you're throwing all the tricks at it. But if you can do that at a higher engine speed, look at that same torque. The same torque at 5,000 RPM makes a lot more power if you make that same torque at 6,000 RPM. And then you extrapolate that out at 15, 16, 17, 18, 19,000 RPM. That same thing happens. And they can do that. They can make it rev higher. It's pretty cool stuff. The BorgWarner turbos have a faster spool due to gamma titanium turbine wheels. I know that a real Garrett turbo seems to always do better than these offshore turbos do, of the same size, in the testing that I've done. And that doesn't surprise me. Their wheel design is much better and newer. And, a lot of these copies are older generations and stuff. But again, that's not the question. Do you want to spend $300 or $400, or do you want to spend a few $1,000s to get the better one? Guys in a racing, you got to do that if you're going to try to go faster than the other guy. But if you're going to try to make 1,000 horsepower, cheap turbos is pretty easy to do. On another channel here, YouTube heard that a 6-pack goes from 2 to 6. Yeah, because the two outer ones, you wouldn't want the two outer ones, especially if they're primarily responsible for feed. Like the center two is responsible for feeding all of them. And then if you have one or other on the outer one open up, it's primarily responsible for feeding the cylinders that it's closest to. It could draw through all of them, but it's going to be pretty far away from the other end where the other one is centrally mounted. So a 246 thing, like the 4 thing, is not really going to work out that well. James, what RPM range is good for a big block for cruise RPM? As low as possible, depending on what kind of camshaft you have. The camshaft is going to also help dictate, not for more fuel economy, but it's just going to get unhappy. Like if you put a 270 at 50 camshaft in it, it's not going to want to idle along down the freeway at 2,000 RPM. It's just not going to be happy. What's the story of the cam in the back? There's actually 2 of them. One of them is damaged, and the other one is some kind of solid roller LS camshaft. Thinking man, I will check I'll check my email for the snake picture. Casey, forward snake. Let's see a preview. Oh yeah, that is a good size gopher snake, huh? I like that. I like it. That thing's thick and meaty. I like that. You want 1,000 horsepower and 100 miles a gallon? That would be a neat trick. For SCCA, their rules allow smaller engines for run less weight. Yeah, that's been a common thing. They're trying to have, because a lot of, especially back in the day, you have auto manufacturers that didn't make 5-liter motors or whatever, and so they're trying to get them to make horsepower per liter or horsepower per ton or whatever metric that they're using, and they're trying to do it based on rules. I mean, based on weight. NASCAR used to have V6 cars. I thought that the V6 cars were the Busch Grand National cars, that they were in a different class, but they did run the V6s. I'm new to LS's. What's that plug under the rear seal cover? Are you talking about the dog bone or the barbell? The barbell is an oil seal. Have you owned any 4.6 Mustangs? I have, if that question is to me. I owned a 98 and did a bunch of stuff on it. We did a series for Muscle Mustangs with it. Who do you know who makes a 2-barrel blow through? I ran my 55 or 4412 500 CFM 2-barrel as a blow through on the inline 6-cylinder. We ran it with the E85. We just put really big jets on it, but it's not something you could use on the street. Six-liter flat top 799s, red hot cam, single or twin. The turbos don't matter. The turbos are just going to dictate how much power you want. How much power do you want to make? And then you select your turbos for that power level. Get some pictures of my 496. I'm running a 2500 CFM Dominator style throttle body on a single plane, 220-pound injectors. Would a dual air intake make a difference over a single cold air intake? It depends on what size that is and what the flow rate is. I don't know how big the hose is running off of the air cleaner, assembly that you have. But you need to flow that. Is it going through like a corrugated tube or something that you have over somewhere? The easy way would be to try it. I mean, that's where the chassis dyno is really nice. You just take the lid off and see, oh, look, it wants more airflow. One more minute. Summit Racing. Clock's ticking. Who's going to get the last question in there? It's funny. People out there live for disagreeing. Have you ever gone to Irwindale Drag Strip? I have not. I don't think I've ever run there. A duck the size of a horse, that'd be good eating. Did you see the H2 versus Tesla Plaid video? I haven't. The Omni has paint on it now. So the Car Farm guys, which again, huge thanks to Brian and Ben, the Omni is blue now. So I'm super excited. And when I say they are trying to get it ready for the convention. So hopefully I'm going to be able to fly back and help do whatever needs to be done and get that thing ready. Ugliest car ever dodged. I'm gonna ban you immediately right now. Dodge Omni. I think you mean coolest car ever. So I'm excited about that. I want to get it back for the so it looks like I'm going to fly out and possibly drive it back. We'll see. We'll see how all that works out. I've got to get it registered and stuff first. Richard, GLH is not primered. It has blue Santa Fe blue paint, the best color that you could possibly paint an Omni. Santa Fe blue, there's nothing better than that. It just looks awesome. and then lots of boost. I'm disappointed that when I go back to the S-Stack deal, that I don't have more dyno information. I'm pissed off that the thing didn't work out the way that we hoped it was going to. I was going to have a whole bunch of dyno testing when I went back there, so I'd be able to talk to everybody. Now I'm just going to go back and everyone's going to hate me because I don't have any engine dyno information. It needs to be Imperial blue? No, it needs to be Santa Fe blue because there's no better blue in the world than Santa Fe blue. Gold dust is number one. They have a gold one there. Imperial blue, that's weak. Might as well be Marina blue. Nope. I do like them. And especially after when I saw the engine compartment painted, when Brian first did the engine compartment, when they painted it when I was back there, it was awesome. Yep, Santa Fe blue. And on that note, it's time to go. But I will see you guys all tomorrow.